Chapter 7. High on a hill above the city, Edo Castle's massive conglomeration of stone walls, gable roofs, and watchtowers shimmered, hazy and insubstantial in the rain and fog. As dusk deepened into the evening, lights from its many lanterns wavered, as if submerged in the sea. Inside the castle, Sano's estate occupied an enclosed compound. The mansion's many wings angled around courtyards and gardens. Within the private chambers at the center of the estate, Raiko began the nightly ordeal of putting her daughter to bed. "Time to go to sleep," Raiko said, patting the futon laid out on the floor. "No!" Akiko said. Raiko sighed. Akiko was a moody child, all sweetness one moment and all temper the next. Raiko wondered whether bad experiences she'd had while pregnant had affected her daughter's personality. Or maybe Akiko had never forgiven Raiko for leaving her behind when she and Sano had gone to rescue Masahiro after he'd been kidnapped. Sometimes they got along fine, but often they clashed wills like enemy warlords. "Come on, Akiko, it's late and you're tired," Raiko said. "Not tired," Akiko protested. Her face bunched into a frown that pretended one of her horrific tantrums. She didn't have them for anybody except Raiko, who, determined to learn to handle her child, resisted the temptation to call her nurse to deal with Akiko. "No more arguments," she said gently but firmly. "You're going to bed now." Akiko sobbed, screamed, and beat her head and heels on the floor as if possessed by a demon. Raiko soothed, scolded, and pleaded. By the time Akiko had worn herself out and fallen asleep, Raiko felt as beaten up as she'd lost in a battle. She stepped out the door and saw Sano coming. He smiled, but an air of tension around him caused her heart to race. "What's happened?" "No new political upheavals," Sano reassured her. "I met my uncle, Major Kumasawa, today." "Oh," Raiko said, thinking that it was about time. She accompanied Sano into their chamber, where he removed his rain-damp clothes. Raiko opened the cabinet, took out a robe, and helped him put it on. "Why did you finally decide to make contact with your uncle?" "I didn't. He came to me to request my help." Sano explained that the man's daughter had gone missing and he'd spent the day searching for an Asakusa. Raiko felt a stir of excitement. Here, perhaps, was a new investigation for her to join. "Did you find any clues?" she said as she heated sake on the charcoal brazier. "Better than that," Sano said, kneeling opposite Raiko. "I found Chiyo herself. She's alive." Raiko was amazed at his quick results. "That's wonderful!" But even though she was glad for Chiyo's sake, she couldn't help feeling disappointed. The investigation was over already. "I took her to my uncle's house," Sano said. "The place where your mother grew up? What's it like?" "About what you would expect, typical for his rank." Men weren't good at describing places in the detail that women wanted, Raiko thought. She sensed that the visit to his ancestral estate had caused Sano's feelings he would rather not discuss. "Your uncle must have been very pleased and grateful." "Pleased I would have liked. Grateful, not exactly." Sano sounded nettled beneath his humor. "He's stern, hard man, a real old-style samurai." "Well, the plague on him," Raiko said, offended on Sano's path. "You brought his daughter home safe and sound." "Not exactly sound." Sano described Chiyo's dazed, weak condition and injury on her head. "And it appears that she was violated." "How awful," Raiko murmured, recalling the time she'd been kidnapped by a madman who'd nearly ravished her, and she knew that the consequences of rape could be even worse than the pain and terror. Masahiro padded barefoot into the room and asked, "What does it mean, violated?" Raiko and Sano exchanged perpetual glances. They tried not to talk about adult matters when their son could hear, but Masahiro had sharp ears. He could sense when something had happened, and often showed up at the scene before his parents knew he was there. Raiko gestured at Sano. "You're his father, you explain." Sano told Masahiro. "It means she was hurt." "Hurt? How?" Sano looked as flustered as Raiko felt. Masahiro was familiar with the facts of life. He'd seen animals mating, their offspring born, but he was too young and innocent to know about rape. "Never mind," Sano put on a stern expression that closed the subject. Who did this to Chio? Raiko asked. Has she said? She doesn't remember much. Sano puffed out his breath with frustrated concerns. And she became so upset that Major Kumasawa put a halt to my questions. Is Major Kumasawa my uncle too? Masahiro asked. He's your great uncle, Sano said. Can I meet him? Raiko herself was eager to meet Sano's family. She wanted to know what her husband came from, to see his traits reflected in the faces of strangers. But she said, someday. A family that had suffered such an ordeal would be in no shape to contend with new relations. She asked Sano, what are you going to do about Chio? Well, Major Kumasawa's asked me to find and punish the kidnapper. And you agreed? Of course, Sano said. Raiko heard misgivings in his voice, but they didn't put off her desire to collaborate in the investigation. Can I help? Sano smiled with appreciation. As a matter of fact, you can. Major Kumasawa doesn't want me to talk to Chio again. I could force him to cooperate. But after what Chio's been through, she probably wouldn't want to discuss it with a man. She might be more comfortable with a woman. So I asked Major Kumasawa if he would permit her to be questioned by my wife. He agreed, although reluctantly. Will you do it? I'd be glad to, Raiko said. Not only did she welcome a chance to help catch a criminal and obtain justice for Chio, perhaps she could smooth Sano's relations with his newfound family. Chio insisted on going home to her husband and children, Sano said. Her husband is Captain Okubo. He's a retainer to Lord Horeo, daimyo of Itsuma province. They live inside the daimyo's estate. You can talk to her there. I'll go first thing tomorrow, Raiko said. I'll be needing more help, Sano said. I sent for Hirata. Footstep approached down the corridor, the gate slightly heavy on one leg. Here he is now. Into the room strode Hirata, the Shogun's Sosakan-sama, most honorable investigator of events, situations, and people. He had inherited the post from Sano 7 years ago, when Sano became Chamberlain. He was also Sano's chief retainer and close friend, although respective duties kept them much apart. Greetings, Hirata said, bowing. He wasn't tall, and he wore modest garb, a grey and black kimono, surcoat and trousers. His face was broad and ordinary. He didn't stand out in a crowd, but appearances were deceiving. Raiko knew, 7 years ago, Hirata had been seriously injured in the line of duty. A lesser man would be dead or invalid, but Hirata hadn't apprenticed himself to a mystic martial arts master. Rigorous training had whittled away a spare bit of fat from his body, which was now all muscle, sinew, and bone as strong as steel. Secret rituals had conditioned his mind, had replaced his youthful, naive mien with an expression of preternaturally mature wisdom, and he'd gained a reputation as the best martial artist in Edo. Masahiro yelled, "Hiya!" and launched a flying kick at Hirata. Hirata took the kick to his stomach, howled in comic pain, and fell backwards with a floor-shaking thud. Masahiro threw himself on Hinata. As they wrestled and Masahiro laughed, Reiko protested, "Masahiro, that's no way to greet a guest." Hirata let Masahiro pin him face down. Masahiro sat on Hirata's back, crying, "I win, I win!" "I surrender," Hirata said. Let me up." Masahiro climbed up Hirata, who asked Sano, "How can I be of service?" Sano told him about the kidnapping and assault while Raigo poured cups of sake for the men. Right now I have no idea who might be responsible. After I spoke with Chio, I questioned her attendants, but they didn't see anything. I need you to help me beat the bushes for leads. I'll do my best. Hirata didn't mention any other work he might have pending. He had a detective corps to cover for him, and his first duty was to Sano, his sworn master. I have some contacts who might be useful. Masahiro had been listening with a pensive frown on his face. He blurted out, "I want to help too." The adults regarding him with surprise. Sano said, "What? How?" "I can look for clues," Masahiro said eagerly. "I can interrogate witnesses and suspects." He stammered the difficult words. "I'll catch the bad man." Hirata chuckled. "Here's a pine cone that didn't fall far from the tree." "Our son spends too much time playing detective," Raiko said with a laugh. Masahiro bristled. "I'm not playing, I'm practicing." "Yes, and that's good," Sano said. But this is a real investigation, not a game. We can't have you chasing a bad man who won't want to be caught. It could be dangerous. If anybody attacks me, I can defend myself, Masahiro insisted. He'd proved he could, Raiko knew, but she said, a real investigation is too complicated. It's for grown-ups, not children. You're too young, Sano said. I'm not. I'm almost 10, Masahiro said. Your manners are worse than that. If you were half that age, Raiko rebuked him, but gently, because she understood what it was like to want to be a detective and not permitted. Once Sano had refused to let her participate in his investigations, on the grounds that women weren't capable or allowed by tradition. Only by taking matters into her own hands and proving her worth had she prevailed. Don't contradict your parents. Masahiro bowed, he said. I'm sorry. Please forgive me. He was a good considerate boy who only forgot courtesy when carried away by youthful impetuousness. How long do I have to wait before I can be a detective? Raiko could feel Sano thinking that he didn't want their son following in his footsteps, investigating murders for the shogun, facing the constant threat of death. Neither did she. Sano said, until you're 15. That was the official age of manhood for samurai, when they could marry, earn their keep, fighting wars, and take on other adult responsibilities. Time went so fast, Raiko thought, with a pang of sadness. Before they knew it, Masahiro would be a man. That's forever, Masahiro protested. Although strong, mature, and self-controlled for his age, he looked on the verge of tears. Isn't there something I can do? No, Sano and Raiko said together. They both wished to protect Masahiro from the world. He'd already seen too much, even though this case was within the family, without the danger of working for the shogun. It had its own particular horrors to which a child shouldn't be exposed. But don't argue, Sano said sternly, although Raiko knew he hated to disappoint their son. Our decision is final. Chapter 8. The rising sun shone pale and diluted through storm clouds as Sano left his compound with Detective Marume and Fukita and his entourage. As they rode along the passage, water dripped from the eaves of the covered corridors atop the stone walls onto their wicker hats and straw rain capes. Their horses' hooves splashed in puddles on the paving stones. High above them, far beyond Edo Castle, rain obliterated the green eastern hills outside the city. The pealing of temple bells echoed, then quickly faded, as if drowned by the humid summer air. Sano and his men came upon another procession of mounted samurai, led by Yanikisawa. Good day, Sano-san, Yanikisawa said. He and Sano exchanged polite bows. I was sorry to hear about what happened to Major Kumasawa's daughter Chiyo. He sounded genuinely concerned and sympathetic, but Sano's guard went up at once. News travel fast, Sano said. He took for granted that Yanikisawa kept abreast of his business. He did the same for Yanikisawa. But Sano was alarmed by how efficient Yanikisawa's informants were. News travel especially fast when it concerns the uncle and cousin of a man as important as yourself, Yanikisawa said. He was also aware of the relationship between Sano and the Kumasawa clan, Sano observed. What other facts do you have stored up in case they should come in handy? Sano said in a light jocular tone. Yanikisawa responded with a pleasant smile. Not half as many as you do, I'm sure. I assume you're on your way to hunt down the person who perpetrated the crime against your clan? You assume correctly. Sano wondered if Yanikisawa had planted a spy inside the Kumasawa estate because he'd figured Sano would eventually show up there. Well, I wish you the best of luck, Yanikisawa said, and I'll be glad to help if you like. Memories flickered through Sano's mind. He saw himself and Yanikisawa rolling in the dirt together, locked in mortal savage combat. He heard Yanikisawa howling for his blood. Yanikisawa's current behavior is truly perplexing. I'll keep your offer in mind. Many thanks. They bowed and said their farewells and rode in opposite directions. Fukita glanced over his shoulder and said, He wants to help? How about that? Maybe a rat can change its whiskers, Marume said, but he's got a trick up his sleeves, mark my word. Obviously, Sano said. What are you going to do? Fukita asked. I'm going to stop relying on spies who can tell me what Yanikazawa ate for breakfast, but can't find out what's in his mind. It's time to bring in an expert. Escorted by a squadron of guards, Raiko rode in her palanquin through the district south of Edo Castle, where the daimyo and their hordes of retainers lived. Her bearers carried her down wide boulevards thronged with mounted samurai, past the barracks that enclosed each huge fortified estate. Rain began to patter on the roof of Raiko's palanquin as her procession stopped at the gatehouse of the estate that belonged to the Lord of Itsuma province. Lieutenant Tanuna said to the guards, "The wife of the Honorable Chamberlain Sano is here to see the wife of Captain Ukubo." The guard opened the gate and called someone to announce Raiko's arrival. Raiko had read the Kumasawa clan dossier and knew that Chiyo was a lady-in-waiting to the daimyo's womenfolk. She hoped Chiyo was receiving good care here. After a brief interval, a manservant put his head out the gate, spoke with the guard, and shook his head. The guard told Lieutenant Tanuma, "Sorry, Captain Okubo's wife doesn't live here anymore. She's staying at her father's house in Asakusa." Sano and his entourage rode across Nihonbashi, the bridge that had the same name as the river it spanned, as well as Edo's merchant quarter. The bridge was jammed with traffic. Porters carried trunks for samurai, traveling palanquins. Peasant women armed with market baskets jostled, begging priests and children. Foot soldiers patrolled. Below them barges floated on the murky brown water. Wharves stacked with lumber, bamboo poles, vegetables and coal occupied shores lined with warehouses. Drizzle hung so thickly in the air that it muted the sounds of seagulls shrieking, oars splashing, and voices raised in laughter and argument. The wet atmosphere intensified the stench from the fish market at the north end of the bridge. Sano scanned the crowds looking for Toda Ikuyo, the master spy. Earlier he had stopped in the chambers within Edo Castle that housed the Mesuke, the Tokugawa intelligence service. The secretary had informed him that Toda was working at the bridge. He knew from experience that Toda was hard to work. Toda was ordinary in appearance, so utterly lacking distinctive features that Sano could never remember what he looked like, even though they'd known each other for more than a decade. Neither could most people. There was an advantage in Toda's line of work. As Sano eyed the faces of samurai who passed him, he thought of what he'd learned from Toda's dossier some months ago. Toda began his life as a Tuteko, an abandoned child, one among legions that roamed the cities. No one knew who his parents were. Toda had been fended for himself by stealing. One night, when he was 12, he sneaked into the estate of the rich daimyo. There he lived for 3 months, filching food from the kitchen, sleeping under the raised buildings. The daimyo's men noticed things missing and found traces of Toda, but they couldn't catch him until the dogs cornered him. They brought him before the daimyo. "I can use a boy with your talents," the daimyo had reportedly said. "From now on, you're in my service." He put Toda to work spying on his retainers, reporting any hint or act of disloyalty. This went on for 10 years, during which Toda was granted the rank of samurai. Then the daimyo ran into financial trouble. He couldn't pay the cash tribute required by the shogun, Tokugawa Itsune. He presented Toda to the shogun and said, "A good spy is worth more than any amount of money, and the young fellow is the best." So the legend went. Toda had risen within the rank of the Metsuke until he became the chief spy. To him and his subordinates belonged much of the credit for keeping the Tokugawa regime in power. Now Sano heard a voice call, "Greetings, Honorable Chamberlain Sano. Are you looking for me by any chance?" He saw a samurai, who appeared to be Toda, leaning against the bridge's railing. Toda was ageless, his brother neither tall nor short, fat nor thin, his face composed of features seen on a million others. He wore the ubiquitous wicker hat and straw-rain cape, and an expression of world-weary amusement was vaguely familiar. "Yes, as a matter of fact." Sano jumped off his horse and joined Toda. His men halted, traffic streamed around them. "I'm not interrupting any secret operation, am I?" "Not at all. I haven't done much of that since Lord Matsudaya's death. Things have been quiet lately. I'm just conducting school." "What kind of school?" Sano asked. "For the next generation of Mitsuke agents. Political strife will flare up again eventually." We will need new spies who know the craft. Sano looked around. So, where are your students? They'll show up soon. What can I do for you? I want you to put Chamberlain Yanikisawa under surveillance, Sano said. Interest enlivened Toda's expression. Why? Have you the reason to believe he's plotting against you? Only that he's been too nice for too long. Indeed he has. As I said, things are quiet, Toda added. I must tell you that Yanikisawa already has us spying on you. That doesn't surprise me, Sano said. Yanikisawa was far more careful of potential rivals than Sano had ever been. And since I told you about his spying, I also have to tell him about yours, just to be fair. That doesn't surprise me either. Sano knew that the Metsuke had to serve all the top officials in the regime, keep them happy, and offend none. That was how Toda and his kind rode the shifting tides of political power. Do what you must. Wouldn't you rather use your own men? Toda said, hinting that they were more trustworthy than himself. They're on the job too. But they come up empty, and that's why you're calling on us, Toda said, wisely superior. I might as well deploy all the ammunition at hand. Although Sano couldn't entirely trust Toda, he'd run out of other options. Begin your surveillance today. Handle it personally. I assure you that my agents are trained and competent. But you're the best. Homer crinkled Toda's eyes. Flattery is nice. But what I really like... His gaze suddenly moved past Sano and sharpened. He called, Kimura-san, Ono-san, Hitomi-san. 3 people walking across the bridge stopped abruptly. One was a stout woman with a shawl that covered her hair and a basket over her arm. One was a water seller carrying a wooden bucket that hung from the pole around his shoulders. The other was a filthy baker dressed in rags. Toda beckoned and the 3 lined up before him. How did you know it was us? Said the woman. She pulled down her shawl, revealing a shaved crown and the hair tied in a samurai topknot. It's not a bad costume, Kimura-san, but you walk like a sumo wrestler, Toda said. Nobody on the lookout for a spy would mistake you for a woman. He turned to his other student. Utomi-san, your buckets are too light. I could tell they're empty. Don't be so lazy when you're on a real job. It'll get you killed. And you, Ono-san, he said to the baker. I saw a merchant throw a coin on the ground and you didn't pick it up. A samurai like you wouldn't because it's beneath you, but a real baker would have. The students hung their heads. Toda said, You all failed this lesson. Go back to the castle. They slunk off, Sano said. Ah, a class on secret surveillance. Weren't you a little harsh on your boys? My roommate called from astride his horse. I didn't see through that disguise. You weren't paying attention, Toda said. But you should be. You might miss someone who's stalking your master. My roommate looked chastened. A chill passed through Sano. Did Yanikisawa plan to assassinate him? Was he acting friendly because he knew Sano would be around much longer? What I really like, Toda said, resuming the conversation, is for you to ensure that if there's a political upheaval and you come out on top, I'll survive and prosper. That was a fair deal as far as Sano was concerned. Find out what Yanikisawa's up to, and I will. Chapter 9. The rain turned into a downpour while Raiko and her escorts traveled to Asakusa. By the time they reached Major Kumasawa's estate, the roof of a palanquin was leaking and her cloak was damp. She alighted in the courtyard under a roof that was supported on pillars and covered path leading up the steps of the mansion. She'd been curious to see Sano's clan's ancestral home, but the streaming rain obscured the buildings. An old woman met her on the veranda, bowed and said, Welcome, Honorable Lady Raiko. We've been expecting you. She was in her 60s, grey-haired, modestly dressed. Her plain, somber face was shadowed under the eyes, as if from a sleepless night. My name is Yasuko. I am Chiyo's mother. She ushered Raiko into the mansion's entryway, where Raiko removed her shoes and clothes. I'm sorry you had to make such a long journey in this weather. She seemed genuinely regretful. It would have been easier for you to see Chiyo at her hometown. She is unable to return there. Her husband has cast her off. Raiko was shocked, although she realized she shouldn't be. Society viewed a woman who had been violated as disgraced and contaminated. Rape was considered akin to adultery, even though the victim wasn't to blame. When he came last night to fetch Chiyo, he found out what had happened to her, Yasuko explained. He no longer wants her as his wife. He means to get a divorce. How terrible, Raiko said as the woman escorted her through the mansion's dim dark corridors. Her husband could divorce Chio by simply picking up a brush and making 3.5 straight lines on a piece of paper, and that was a mild punishment. He could have sent her to work in a brothel if he chose. What is worse, her husband has kept their children, and he won't even let her see them, Yasuko said. She's very upset. She slid open the door, called inside, Lady Raiko is here, and stood aside for Raiko to enter. Chio was sitting up in bed, propped by pillows. A kilt covered her from bosom to toes, even though the room was warm and stuffy. Her lank hair spilled from the bandage that swathed her head. Her features were so swollen from crying that Raiko couldn't tell what she looked like under normal circumstances. Chio's mouth quivered and her chest heaved with sobs. Raiko knew that the state of profound grief that possesses mind and body like an uncontrollable force. She experienced it once in Miyako, when she thought Sano had been killed, and again when she'd gone north to rescue Masahiro and found evidence that he was dead. Now Raiko faced a woman who'd lost her husband and children, even though they were still alive. She forgot that she'd once been ready to dislike Sano's relatives because they cared more for social customs than their bloodkin. Her heart went out to Chio. She knelt beside Chio, bowed and said, I am sorry about what happened. She felt inadequate, unable to think of anything else to say but, please, accept my sympathy. Many thanks, Chio's voice broke up. You're very kind. Her mother offered Raiko refreshments. Raiko politely refused, was pressed, then accepted. The social routine gave Chio time to compose herself. Yasuko went off to see about the food. Raiko sensed that she didn't want to listen while Raiko questioned Chio and her disturbing answers. Honorable Lady Raiko, appreciate you coming to talk to me, Chio said humbly. There's no need to call me by my title, Raiko said. My name will do. Very well, Raiko-san. 1,000 apologies for causing you so much trouble. Raiko liked Chio for caring about other people's feelings, even after her terrible ordeal. I'm sorry we had to meet under such circumstances. Chio's face crumbled. Raiko had to force herself to say, My husband wants me to ask you about what happened. Can you bear it? Chio nodded meekly. A tremulous sigh issued from her. But what good will it do? It will help my husband catch the man who hurt you. Tears trickled down Chio's drenched face. Her eyes were so red that she looked as if she were weeping blood. Suppose it does? Nothing will change. My husband won't take me back. Last night he told me I was dead to him, dead to our children. Once he loved me, but he doesn't anymore. He looked so stern, so hateful. She wailed. I'll never see my babies again. Raiko could hardly bear to imagine her children ripped away from her. Alarmed at Chio's suffering, she urged, Wait a while. Your husband may feel differently. No, he won't, Chio insisted. Raiko's sympathy and family connection made Chio speak more frankly than she might have with another stranger. He's a good man, but once he makes up his mind, he never changes it. How Raiko deplored male obstinacy and pride. He thinks I dishonored our family. I think maybe he's right. Why? Because I brought it on myself. No, you didn't, Raiko said firmly. My husband told me what you said at the shrine. You left the group because your baby was upset. You got kidnapped. That wasn't your fault. That isn't all that happened. I remember more than I told your husband. It's coming back to me in bits and pieces. Controlling her eagerness for information, Raiko spoke gently. What else do you remember? I took my baby into the garden and I nursed him. Chio's arms crept out from under the quilt and cradled around the infant who should have been there but wasn't. I heard someone moaning behind a grove of bamboo. He called for help. I went to see what was wrong. Women were taught from an early age to put themselves at the service of others. and Chio had an obliging nature. Raiko understood what must have happened, and she burned with anger at the rapist. He lured you to him by playing on your kindness. But I was stupid, Chio cried. I fell for the trip. I deserve for my husband to divorce me, take my children. Women were also taught to be humble and accept responsibility for whatever ills came their way. No, Raiko said. You couldn't have known it was a trick. Neither could anyone else. Don't blame yourself. Weeping, contorted, Chio said, My husband does. So would most other people, Raiko thought sadly. Your husband is wrong. I'm fortunate my father hasn't cast me off too. Most fathers probably would shun a daughter who'd been violated. The fact that Major Kumasawa hadn't bespoke his love for Chio. Perhaps Sano's picture of him was a rigid tradition-bound samurai wasn't completely accurate. Your father has put the blame exactly where it belongs, on the man who hurt you, Raiko said. He wants to catch him and punish him. So do I. She felt her own taste for vengeance. Don't you? I don't know. Chio looked worried at the thought of taking direct action against anyone. She probably didn't have a vengeful bone in her body. But if that's what everyone else wants, we want justice for you. We need your help. Alright. Chio was clearly used to obeying authority. What do you want me to do? Tell me everything you can remember about the kidnapping and the attack. Let's begin with the man who tricked you. What did he look like? Chio pondered, frowned, and shook her head. I don't know. I recall walking up to the bamboo grove. After that, everything is blank until... a shudder wagged her body. Until I woke up. Chio turned her face into the pillow, as if hiding from the recollection. Raiko speculated that Chio had been grabbed, then forced to drink a potion that rendered her unconscious and erased memories. She leaned forward, bracing herself to hear the awful details of the rape. She spoke quietly, trying not to pressure Chio. Then what happened? He touched me where no one but my husband has ever touched. Chio drew a deep breath and swallowed hard. He suckled milk from me and he bit me. She opened her robe. On her breasts, around the nipples, were curved rows of teeth marks, red and bloody. Raiko winced. Did you see his face? Only for a moment. Everything was misty and blurry. It was like... Chio fumbled forward. I once read a poem about a pavilion of clouds. It reminded me of that. Raiko wondered if the clouds had been a hallucination caused by the drug. The clouds covered his face except for his eyes and mouth, Chio said. He'd worn a mask, Raiko deduced. Chio shrank against the cushions, relieving her fear. She whispered, He was ugly and cruel, like a demon. Was he someone you recognized? Did he seem familiar? No, at least I don't think so. Would you recognize him if you saw him again? Perhaps, Chio said uncertainly. Raiko had a dismay at the idea that the rapist might get away with his crime because Chio had so little memory of it. Can you remember anything that might help us identify him? More shuddered, convulsed Chio. His voice. While he did it, he muttered, Dearest mother, my beloved mother. Raiko felt her own body shiver with disgust as the rapist's perversion. Did you hear anything besides his voice? The rain and thunder outside? That didn't help narrow down the location. It had been raining all over Edo for days. Maybe Chio had imagined the clouds she had seen. Clouds and rain was the poetic term for sexual release. Maybe the drug had conjured up the clouds and linked them with the rain, and a violation in the dazed mind. Think again. Can you remember anything at all? Raiko said hopefully. I'm sorry, I cannot, Chio sighed, exhausted and weakened from relieving her ordeal. I went back to sleep. Then she froze rigid, her muscles locked in sudden, brief spasm, her expression altered among shock, fright, and horror. No! Oh no! What's wrong? Urgently says Raiko. What do you remember? Something new. I woke up again, just for an instant, because he slapped my face. Chio touched her cheek, and I heard him say that if I told anybody what he'd done to me, he would kill me, and kill my baby too. I watched Rosalie stare. I told, and I shouldn't have. Now I'll be punished. Now my baby's going to die. That's not going to happen, Reiko assured Chio. You're safe here. Your father will protect you. My husband and I will catch the man before he can make good on his threat. Reiko would do everything in her power to deliver the monster to justice. Even though she knew there was no guarantee that she would succeed, she said, I promise.